Right versus left. It's an age-old battle that continues to this day. And I'm not talking about politics. I'm talking about the fact that after 150 years of humans driving cars around the world, we as a species have never been able to figure out which side of the road we should be driving on. It's one of those things that we take as normal today, but when you step back, it's like, what the hell is that about? Why do Americans, Germans, Russians, and the French drive on the right? And why does the UK, Australia, Japan, and South Africa drive on the left? Why have we figured out how to make airports and shipping lanes and other forms of transportation follow global standards, but we've built opposing infrastructure for the most common way to get around and just dared travelers to figure it out?
I don't know what any of this is, and I'm scared.
There are dozens of legends and reasons attached to how we ended up with all these mismatched roadways. Theories that tie to covered wagons, knights, Napoleon, and even the Pope. And it's funny, the result of all of that, apart from American tourists stepping into oncoming traffic in London, is that one of the biggest costs for global car companies today is that they have to make identical but completely reversed interiors with the steering wheel on the right or the left, depending on where they're selling those cars. Wouldn't it be simpler, easier, and cheaper if we could all just agree on one side?
I love driving on the wrong side of the road, don't you?
First things first, this is not just about America versus the United Kingdom like it's 1776 all over again. Though, put a pin in that, because it does factor into the story. The United States of America is one of about 148 countries that drive on the right side of the road. That makes us part of the roughly 70% of the world that also drives on the right, including Russia, China, France, Canada, Brazil, and Mexico. Meanwhile, the United Kingdom is part of the 30% that drives on the left. And actually, many left-side driving countries are on that side of the road because of the UK. They were former British colonies like Australia, India, and New Zealand. The former Dutch colony, South Africa, has its drivers on the left side due to its eventual British influence, making it different from the Dutch homeland of the Netherlands. And what about Japan? Well, that too had a lot to do with British influence when Japan's railways were being built under British guidance. But a lot of this was set in motion before the British Empire, back to those dusty roads of the old world, and the knights, wagons, and oxen that trudged over them.
We are but simple travelers who seek the enchanter who lives beyond these woods.
France, England's bitter rivals for, well, ever, has more influence on where people drive these days than perhaps any other country. They're probably pretty proud of that. Up to the mid-1700s, travel on the left or the right side of the road in France was an issue of class. The poor folk walking on foot kept to the right, whereas the richy-richters, those high-class horse and cart owning aristocrats, traveled on the left. Then the French Revolution happened, and being rich was not exactly something you wanted to shout about, so the upper class quietly moved to the right side to blend in. Then came a guy named Napoleon, emerging as France's new ruler. Napoleon is also famous for a very specific physical trait. That's right, being left-handed. This meant that he wielded his sword in his left hand, and in his self-obsessed wisdom, he made an official decree. Everyone on the right side. He wanted easy access to striking you down. The British have never been a fan of the French, so at first they decided to walk on the left. But they had also made an official keep right declaration in 1756 regarding foot traffic. So carts, horses, and eventually those newfangled motorized vehicles kept to the left to avoid said foot traffic. Faster moving things on the left side, this idea exists today on escalators in the UK. Don't believe me? Just try standing on the left and see what happens. Then the Highway Act of 1835 made it official, and the UK's roads would forever be designed for drivers on the left. There's a big theory that a lot of this also had to do with right-handed knights defending Norman castles back in the day. Many stories tie the left side driving preference to the knights of old sticking to the left on the castle's counterclockwise spiral staircases. This allowed the mostly right-handed medieval defenders to have their dominant sword hands on the right. Attacking knights would be out of position. While it's not direct cause and effect, things like this and many other aspects began to subtly condition people to naturally travel on one side or the other in shared spaces. A great example of that was Pope Boniface VII's decree of 1300. He told all of the Christian world to keep to the left. Peter Kincaid, author of the book The Rule of the Road, explained that Pope Boniface's decree was more of a safety issue, because 1300 was a jubilee year, something that pulled a lot of pilgrims into Rome. So partitions were erected to keep foot traffic to the left and safe for all. Long after those partitions were gone, what remained was a tradition of keeping to the left. Ancient Roman soldiers marched on the left as well. Even chariot racers kept to the left, This kept their right side free to whip their horses and rival racers. You know, a lot of this has to do where people preferred to carry their weapons. In fact, the term riding shotgun comes from the American West when stagecoaches needed the driver to sit on the left as the person on the right needed to have a free range of motion with their shotgun-wielding arm. Which brings me to my next point, because although the Roman Empire was so big that the practices and preferences it established filtered out throughout all of Europe over the next several centuries, the only thing that would overhaul such embedded traditions would be a total reset in a new land.
Welcome to Virginia.
There are a lot of stories about how American trajectory aimed us toward the right side of the road. And it's not just that we wanted to be different from the British, although that was actually definitely probably part of it. A man named Albert C. Rose with the U.S. Bureau of Public Roads extensively researched this in the first half of the 20th century. He surmised that there was, quote, smoldering opposition of old world customs in America. I mean, no. The former colonists were determined to do their own thing, like a first grader insisting on wearing their pool floaties to school.
They haven't even got proper uniforms on. All right, okay, all right, no guffawing, no guffawing.
But this attitude was present in colonial America well before we declared independence. Enter the Conestoga wagon, the world's first luxury, heavy-duty, not yet built Ford Tough transport wagon of the 1750s. It needed up to 6 horses or oxen to pull it. And this hunk of covered wood on wheels is one of the first things that helped push Americans to the right-hand side. The wagon offered no easy place for any human to sit and control it. Drivers would need to sit on a lazy board on the left-hand side, but often they just walked along the left side of the road to best keep control of the wagon while it rolled down the right side. By all accounts, the first major highway in America, or turnpike for you East Coasters, was established in 1792 between Lancaster and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And keeping your cart, horse, and/or buggy to the right was adopted as the norm. New York made that official on their roads in 1804, and the Massachusetts Turnpike made it official for them in 1821. The trend continued throughout the Civil War era and beyond, ensuring American riders and drivers would be nothing like those bloody English driving on the left-hand side.
Can we go for a drive?
No. No, man.
And so the world stage is set with traditions that will inform how automobiles are driven before they are even invented. But cars are a big change for the entire world. And in some places, that change is big enough to break these traditions entirely. This message is sponsored by Raycon. You know, with the Winter Olympics happening, there's no better time to get inspired and upgrade your routine. Even if that means just buying a set of Raycon bone conduction headphones. I'm about the furthest thing from a world-class athlete, but I've been using these every day since I've got them, and they've changed the way I listen to music or podcasts, like the Drivecast, check that out, when I'm working on my truck, cleaning the house, or just taking a walk. Instead of being jammed into your ears, they sit just in front and use vibrations to send sound through your bones into your inner ear. Honestly, before I got these, I didn't even know that was possible. The human body is wild. Anyway, you get crystal clear audio while still being able to hear everything around you, like whether that 10mm socket I just dropped hit the driveway or landed somewhere in the engine bay. That's real situational awareness. And they're super comfortable too, designed to be worn all day with no fatigue or soreness, with adjustable speaker arms if your head's a little funny shaped, 13-hour battery life, and an IP68 waterproof rating. Premium features and performance that rival the big brands at half the price. Raycon's bone conduction headphones are here to help you go for gold. So go to buyraycon.com/thedrivebc to get 15% off your order, or click the link in the description. And thanks to Raycon for sponsoring. When cars arrived, many had steering wheels right smack dab in the center. Not even steering wheels, really. They were more like a tiller system, kind of like boats, until the steering wheel made a flashy debut in 1894. As more cars hit the American streets, especially those with seating for at least 2, the steering wheels all went on the right side. This made sense at first for Americans because you wanted a clear view of how close you were to the edge of the road. Nobody wanted to drive into those large ditches found on the side of the roads, which were usually filled with. Then more cars started showing up on roads, and this made it more important to sit on the left side of your car. Roadside drainage ditches weren't the biggest problem. Oncoming traffic was. So when Ford introduced the Model T in 1908, the Tin Lizzie rolled fresh out of the Detroit factory with the steering wheel on the left. And the Model T's popularity set this layout in stone as an American standard. Ford didn't make the rules, but his Model T made it a trend. You wanted to sit opposite of whatever side you drive on. And there is a simple reason for that. Whether you're driving on the left or the right, it's best to be sitting on the opposite side. This gives you a clear view of the road you are driving on, and since most of us are right-hand dominant, driving from the left frees up your hand. Not for sword use, but for shifting. With early transmissions, you wanted your most dexterous hand available to operate the gearbox. But in modern times, that's no longer the case. So why does the side of the road we drive on really matter anymore? With 70% of the world doing it though, it does seem like driving on the right side of the road is the correct way. And I'm not just saying that because I'm American. There have been some scientific studies that have tried to prove this. Researchers posted a report on ScienceDirect.com correlating aspects of human neurophysiology like handedness, eye movement bias, and hemispheric lateralization to left or right driving. While a lot of their research seemed to point to left-hand driving being better for newer drivers, truth is, it can vary for each person and their own abilities, enough that neither setup could be deemed more advantageous. The results, it would seem, are inconclusive. Whether there's a real answer here doesn't matter today because we are so far down the road, we can't just change at this point. But that hasn't stopped countries from doing exactly that in the not-so-distant past. On September 3rd, 1967 at 4:50 a.m., Sweden switched from driving on the left to the right side. That famous day was called
Högertrafikomläggningen.
H-Day. The primary reason was safety. Before the automobile, Sweden had gone back and forth on which side traffic should stick to, and that had a lot to do with which country's rule it was under at the time. And it eventually led to a Sweden that drove on the left side of the road, but also had the steering wheel on the left. Remember all that seeing the road from the opposite side you're driving on stuff? Yeah, Sweden wasn't doing it. And the number of collisions was at a troubling level as more and more cars hit the road. There were 1,313 fatal crashes in 1966 alone, and that's why they switched to right-hand driving from a left-side steering wheel. And how your country drives might have to do with access to the actual cars we drive. That just might be the most important factor, actually. While the UK drives on the left, most of Europe drives on the right, and that's mainly because countries with major automotive brands like Germany, France, and Italy drive on the right as well, and they make cars for themselves first. Australia, for example, has a large culture of Japanese cars because both countries drive on the left. This means that imports are much more practical. Also, not coincidentally, a lot of countries that stick to the left side of the road are island nations, and that makes them generally unconcerned about the cars crossing their borders into their countries or where the ones driving out are going. However, that also limits the types of cars that can be purchased in your country by your citizens. If you've ever seen a JDM freak reversing through an American drive-thru to get their chicken nuggets, you know what I'm talking about. And so Samoa switched sides in 2009, the most recent one, going from right to left. That was in large part because it was cheaper to import right-hand steering-wheeled cars from Australia and New Zealand, so it was just better for their people. And ultimately, that just might be the most important factor, the economics of trade in neighboring countries. In Africa, both Rwanda and Burundi have indicated that they would like to switch from driving on the right to driving on the left, like Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. As members of the East African community, this would simplify freight in the region and make trade simpler and cheaper. Places like the Bahamas currently drive on the left, but also get all their cars from the United States with the steering wheel on the left, creating a big problem, the same problem that Sweden faced in the 60s. Sweden's changeover cost an estimated 600 million Swedish krona, which if you convert to dollars and then adjust for inflation, it's about $125 million today. I have a strong feeling that any major country trying the same thing in 2026 would cost a hell of a lot more. So despite modern-day automobiles being the technical marvels that they are, a lot of how we build them and how we drive them was all determined by who wanted to walk where and how they held their weapons. It's interesting to keep in mind though, because in the 2 decades when Americans want to import GR Yaris's and Suzuki Jimnys, the ones who haven't been paying attention will get them shipped over from Japan, but the ones that are smart will get left-hand drive ones that were built for Mexico. But what about you? Have you ever driven on the opposite side of the road than the one you learned to drive on? Ever taken a spin in a right-hand drive car in America? What calamities would ensue if a big country attempted to switch sides today? Let me know in the comments, where thankfully there are no lanes, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. The America.